Okay, so we're diving into the world of Kaggle notebooks today, and I have to say, I'm pretty pumped to learn more about this.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
I've been hearing more and more about these Kaggle notebooks, and from what I understand, they're kind of a game changer for anyone interested in data science, right?
I see. Like, have you ever thought about, say, you're looking at the passenger list for the Titanic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're wondering if you could use data to, like, predict who would survive.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That kind of thing is totally doable with Kaggle notebooks.
Yes. So we're talking like serious data analysis, but without needing to be some kind of coding genius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't even need a supercomputer.
That's always a plus.
Right. These Kaggle notebooks, they're like these virtual data labs, but you can access them from anywhere, no lab coat required.
I'm starting to see the appeal here, but for those who are totally new to this, like, what exactly is a Kaggle notebook?
So developing Kaggle notebooks, that PDF you were looking at, it gets into the technical details, defining them as these integrated development environments.
Right, right.
But honestly, think of it like this. It's like having a word processor where you can write your code, a coding platform to run it all, and a really powerful computer.
Okay. So it's like everything you need is all in one place.
Exactly. All rolled into one. And the best part, it mostly uses Python, which is like the end language for data science these days.
Okay, so it's user friendly, even for beginners, and it's got all the tools you need built in. But let's say I'm just starting out in data science. Why should I be particularly interested in Kaggle notebooks?
Well, think about it. Let's say you want to learn data analysis, but you don't have thousands of dollars to drop on a top-of-the-line computer.
A pretty common problem.
Right. Kaggle notebooks just totally eliminate that barrier to entry. They give you free access to all this powerful computing power so you can focus on learning the actual skills, not fighting with your tech setup.
That's huge. No more excuses about not having the right equipment. Now, I've also heard about these Kaggle competitions, and to be honest, the idea of competing in anything related to data science sounds a little intimidating.
I get it, but the cool thing is there are different levels for everyone.
Okay, so you don't have to be like, data science whiz to participate.
Not at all. They've got these playground competitions where you can kind of just test the waters, experiment a bit, less pressure.
So it's more about learning than winning at that level.
Exactly. Then you've got your featured competitions, which are more for the serious players, real-world problems, often with actual prize money involved.
Wow, so you could actually win something. That's pretty wild.
It is. And the range of data they use is incredible. You've got everything from medical image recognition to analyzing social media sentiment.
So what kind of data sets are we talking about here? Give me some examples.
Oh man, where do you even start? They've got data sets for pretty much anything you can imagine. Like, remember that Titanic example we were talking about?
With predicting survival.
Yeah, that data set is actually available on Kaggle.
Wow, that's really cool. So you've piqued my interest in the data sets, and the competitions sound intriguing, to say the least. But there's more to Kaggle than just those two things, right? What else is part of this whole ecosystem?
Oh, there's a ton more. Beyond the notebooks themselves and the competitions, you've got this enormous library of resources. Sync tons of data sets, code you can borrow and adapt, and then these forums where you can connect with other data enthusiasts.
So it's like a whole community of data nerds all gathered in one place.
Pretty much. And it's not just for beginners either. You've got everyone from people just starting out asking basic questions all the way up to these Kaggle grandmasters.
Kaggle Grandmasters. That sounds awfully official. Are we talking like the Jedi Masters of data science here?
They're more like the rock stars of the Kaggle world. They've reached the top of the ranking system.
But there's an actual ranking system.
Yeah, kind of like in a video game. You earn medals by doing well in competitions, sharing cool data sets, writing helpful code, being an active part of the community, things like that.
So it's not just about competing, it's about contributing to the whole knowledge base. I like that.
But let's circle back to our Titanic example for a second. How would someone actually use a Kaggle notebook to analyze that passenger data? I'm really curious about the hands-on aspect of all of this. So we keep coming back to this Titanic data set. I feel like it's a good way to actually visualize how all of this works.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a classic example for a reason.
Yeah.
Imagine you open up a brand new Kaggle notebook, right?
Oh.
You can just pull in that Titanic passenger data. It's right there on the platform, readily available. Yeah. And then from there, you can start exploring.
So when you say exploring, like what does that actually look like? What kinds of things can you deho with that data once you've got it in your notebook? Well, it's really up to you and what you're curious about. Like, you can
Yeah.
start by just looking at passenger demographics, right?
Okay.
Like, were there more men than women on board? What was the age distribution? Things like that.
Interesting.
And then you can go deeper.
Okay.
You can start visualizing survival rates based on different factors,
Yeah.
like age, gender, or even what class they were traveling in, first class, second class, that sort of thing.
So you can see if there are any patterns, like did first class passengers have a higher chance of survival than others?
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about data analysis,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're not just looking at a bunch of numbers, you're trying to find the story behind them, those aha moments, you know?
Yeah.
And Kaggle notebooks give you the tools to actually build visualizations,
Okay.
like graphs, charts, maps that make those insights even clearer.
So it's like turning data into a detective case almost.
Exactly. You're piecing together clues to understand what happened.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Kaggle notebooks can also handle things like predicting outcomes. How does that work with something like this Titanic data?
Oh, that's a great question. So you could actually use a Kaggle notebook to build what's called a model, which basically tries to predict who would have survived based on all the info we have, age, gender, ticket class, things like that.
So it's not a guarantee, obviously, but it's like the data can give you a probability.
Exactly. Of course, no model is perfect, especially with something as complex as the Titanic.
Right, right.
But it's a super cool way to learn about predictive modeling.
And what I think is so cool about this is you're not just working on these notebooks in isolation, right? Like you can actually share what you come up with.
Exactly. That's one of my favorite things about Kaggle.
Yeah.
Is that you can share your notebooks, get feedback from other data people, see how other people approach the same problem, maybe learn some new tricks.
So it's a learning platform, but also a collaborative space, which I think is really neat.
For sure.
So let's say someone listening is like, okay, I'm ready to move beyond exploring these existing data sets like the Titanic. I want to dive into something more specific. What are their options there?
Well, you mentioned earlier that you're interested in learning data science more broadly. Are there any particular areas that you're most curious about or any applications that come to mind?
Honestly, it's all so new to me. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the possibilities. I mean, the idea that you could analyze like social media trends to understand public opinion, or maybe dive into environmental data to track climate change. It's fascinating, but it's also a little overwhelming. Like, where do I even start?
I hear you. It can definitely feel like a bit of a data overload at times. That's where those books you mentioned earlier, the Kaggle book and the Kaggle workbook, come in handy.
So they're like a roadmap or a guidebook to help you navigate all of this?
Exactly. They offer more of a structured approach to learning data science with practical tips, techniques, even step-by-step exercises.
Okay, so it's like taking a course, but at your own pace.
Yeah, pretty much.
So if someone's been playing around with Kaggle notebooks or starting to feel comfortable, what kind of benefits would they get from diving into those books? What would those books give them that maybe they're not getting from just the free form exploration?
Yeah, so the books are going to get into some of the finer points of data science. Like, they'll teach you about data cleaning and preparation, which is super important no matter what kind of data science project you're doing.
Right.
They'll also introduce you to more advanced modeling techniques, so you can build even more accurate and insightful models.
So you're saying the books can take you from like building a basic model to creating something really sophisticated and powerful.
Exactly. They give you that extra edge, you know?
I like it. So it sounds like these books are like the perfect next step for anyone who's ready to go from like Kaggle tourist to seasoned explorer.
Exactly.
But even with all these incredible resources and the potential to do some real good in the world, I have to admit, this whole data science field still feels a little intimidating.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge field, and it's constantly changing.
Right.
That's part of what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, but for someone just starting out, it's also like, where do I even begin?
I get it.
Yeah.
And honestly, that feeling of being a little overwhelmed, of always having more to learn, that never really goes away, even for seasoned data scientists.
So you're saying it's okay to embrace the unknown, to be comfortable with not having all the answers right away?
100%. In fact, I'd say that's one of the most important skills for anyone in data science.
Really?
Yeah. That ability to be comfortable with ambiguity, to constantly question, experiment, iterate. Because the data landscape is always changing, right?
That's true.
The answers you find today might lead to even more questions tomorrow.
It's a journey.
It is. It's a journey.
That's a really good point. It's not about achieving data mastery like overnight, but it's about enjoying that process of always learning something new.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, with platforms like Kaggle, you're not alone on that journey. You've got this whole community of people, from total beginners to experts, who are all excited to share their knowledge, collaborate on projects, and just see what's possible with data.
That's what I'm taking away from our deep dive today. It's not just about the technical skills, but also about that community, that shared curiosity, and the potential to actually make a difference in the world.
Absolutely.
So, to anyone listening who might be feeling that little spark of interest in data science, what's your advice to them?
I would say just dive in, explore Kaggle, play around with some data sets. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And, who knows? You might just uncover a passion you never knew you had.
I love that. Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to fire up a Kaggle notebook and start exploring myself. Thanks so much for being such an awesome guide.
Anytime. Happy to share what I know.
This has been fantastic. Thanks again.
Of course.